Welcome to GIS Gallery. In this video, we'll dive into network analysis, starting with how to create a network and performing a shortest route analysis. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell because I'll be posting more videos on ArcGIS Pro, Python, and GIS programming.
So the first thing that you'll need is a database, and inside it a dataset, and inside it you'll have to import your line network. Okay, so I have already a network.gdb here. Into this I'll be creating a new data set, feature data set. Okay, and its name will be roads. Yeah, and its coordinate system should be same as my line feature, which is in 1983 UTM zone 12 now. Okay, and I'll just click and run. Okay, so if that is done, what I can do is I can import my line data into this dataset. So I'll just import my feature class. My data is line feature, and it's not, because I already have the same data and again in the same database. So before that, let me just rename it F2 line feature 1 2. Yeah, it will be. Now I'll just import this data here. I click on run, and after that is done, so I have my database, I have my dataset, and inside my dataset I have the line feature. Okay, now to this dataset I can actually create my network dataset. Okay, to do that, I'll just right click this dataset. Okay, I'll go to new and I'll create network dataset. Okay, click on network dataset. Okay, so the network dataset name could be roads in D. Okay, and the source feature class is my line feature 12. Okay, so I'll have to select this one. Okay, and after that is done, you can click on run. Yeah, I'll have to create a new database probably. Okay, so new database. Inside it, new data set. And click on. And inside this, oh, I already removed my data, right? So inside this data set, I'll just click here. Now, let me import this data set first. Input features, line feature. I'll click on run, and that is done. If that is done, I can just right click my dataset, click new, network dataset. I'll select my line feature. Okay, and I'll just click run. Okay, so network dataset has been completed. Okay, now the other thing that you need to understand is if you go over to the properties. Okay, so the properties of your network dataset, and if you come over to your traffic attributes and come on cost, you only have the length cost here, right? So you only have the distance cost, but we actually need to find out not just the least traveled path, I mean the least distance path, but we also might need to find out the least time taken, right? So we'll have to create a new cost here of time taken. So, but if you want to find the time taken, we already have the length here. Okay. So if you need to find the time taken to travel, you might need to have the speed traveled. Okay. So if I check over to my line feature, okay, it only have a feature for speed, and it also has a, I mean, the field for speed, and then it also have a field for the length. Okay, so for the each line it has the length and then the time or the speed that vehicles can pass through it. Okay, so if we have the speed and distance, we can easily find out our time, right? So what is the equation to find out time from speed and distance? Distance by speed. Okay, so we'll need to create a cost for that. Okay, so we'll right click the network dataset, we'll click on properties. Okay, and make sure in general we need to enable this one. Okay, index service area index, so this one will speed up our service area index uh, problems. Okay, so when we are doing service area index solving, this one need to be enabled. Okay, so I go to properties, travel attributes, and cost. Okay, and in here we have the hamburger icon. Click on here. We have option called new. Okay, click on new, and now here I'll be finding out my the time taken. Okay, so I can give the name as minutes. Okay, and unit will also be minutes, right? And then in here I'll have to set my equation. Okay, so line feature along. Click here. We have the option here called field script. Okay, if you are giving field script, and then if you click here, you will have the option to set up the equation here. Okay, so set the language as VB script. Okay, and then in here you will have to set the equation. So what are the equation?
Distance by speed.
Distance by speed. So for that we'll need to find out which is our distance field and speed field, right? So we have to set the same thing here. Okay, so if we come over to our attribute table, we know that speed is okay, capital S PEED. Okay, and if you come out to a distance, it's in length underscore MIL. Okay, so which means the length is in miles. Okay, you have to set the same name. So whatever the field name that is in here, we have to give it exactly in our network properties. Okay, network dataset properties. So properties again, I'll come here, travel attributes, cost, come over here, click on new. I'll give the name minutes, unit is minutes, and the type should be field script. Okay, and I'll click here, language will be VB script, and then in VB script our field is taken as our in square brackets. Okay, so it's distance by speed, right? So length underscore mil divided by speed. Okay, so the field should be in square bracket. So you only if you give square bracket, then this will consider the fields that are in the attribute table. Okay. So length underscore mil as same as in the field divided by speed. But then there's a problem here, right? So what is the unit of time that we give here?
Minutes.
Minutes. Okay. But the unit of length is in
Miles,
miles, and then speed might be in
kilometers.
not actually kilometers. It's actually miles per hour. Okay. It's actually in miles per hour. But the thing is like, so if you divide miles by miles per hour, what will be the unit of time? So we have the distance in miles per miles. We have the speed in miles per hour. So if you divide this thing, what might be the unit of time that we get here?
Minutes.
No, it's actually hours. So we have miles and we have miles per hour. So miles divided by miles per hour, we get our times in hours. But we actually need the units in minutes. So we need to actually, how can we convert hours into minutes? How do we convert hours into minutes?
into 60.
Yeah, we'll have to into it by 60. So multiply it by 60. So length mil into 60 divided by speed. Okay, so if you give into 60 in after speed, then it will be considered as length divided by speed into 60. Like it will come over to your denominator. Okay, so make sure you give your into 60 in the numerator, that is length mil into 60, that is divided by your speed. Okay, so if we click OK here, we'll probably get our time data. Okay, so we have minutes added and then length is already there. Just click OK. Okay, after you click OK, right click your network dataset and click on build. Okay, so after you get the set the properties of your network, right click your dataset, click on build and then just run it. Okay, and then your network will be added over here. Okay, so we have a network added over here. Yeah, now using this network we'll be doing our network analysis. For the analysis that we saw just now, we'll be doing that using this network. Okay, now if you go to analysis, okay, you have an option here called network analysis. If you drop down here, we had different network analysis types. We saw service area, we saw route, we saw the closest facility, we saw the location allocation and OD cosmetics, so everything we have here. Now to do that, you have to make sure that the network data source must be set. Okay, so the network that we added, make sure that's the same data set that's in here. Okay, so the roads ending like it's the same data set. Okay, so if that is correct, then we can just go to do our network problems. Okay, so the first problem we'll be seeing today is will be route. Okay, so if you click on that, there will be a route layer added over here. Okay, and now if you see the route layer, we have different stops, we have route, and we have point barriers, we have line barriers and polygon barriers. Okay, and now if the route is selected, then on the tab here you can see your route layer. Okay, click on route layer, you will have all the options to actually run your routing problem analysis. Okay, so the first thing what I'll do is I'll just create my uh, stops. Okay, so you have actually two methods to create your stops. One thing is you can, if you have the stops, right? If you have the points, these stops are where the route should go. Route should be created, right? So we have point A here, we have point B here. We'll be creating route from the point A to point B through these roads. Okay, that is the routing problem. Okay, yeah. So there are two methods by how you can create the stops. One thing is you can import stops. Okay. So if you have a feature class layer or you have a shape file of different points, you can then import them into your stops layer. You just need to select your data, right, and just click apply. Or what you can do is you can directly digitize. So if you see here, you have the create features. Click on create features and then choose the stops. Okay, so I'll set a stop here. My first stop will be there, my second stop will be there, and my third stop will be here. Okay, if that is done, I can just click on save. Okay, now 3 points will be added to my stops layer. And just close this. Okay, now if we open the attribute table of my stops, you can see 3 points have been added, and those 3 points are reflected here. Okay, now I can just create routes from connecting these 3 points. Okay, so if you come over to route layer, you have an option called run here. Using it, you can actually create a route between them. Okay. Now in the travel settings, okay, if you click over here and on the travel mode, if you come over to the cost, in the impedance, we have two impedances here. We have minutes and length. So this minutes is the time cost that we created just now, and this distance is the length that is already there. Okay, so to guess this time, we edited the properties of our network dataset, right, to get the time impedance here. Okay, if it's given as length, okay, so if the impedance is in length, and you click OK and you run this, okay, it will solve, and then it will create routes connecting your three stops based on the time. Okay, based on the time. So a route has been created connecting the points 1, 2 and 3. And now if you go to your attribute table of the routes, okay, it would have actually found out the total length, right? So this is a distance in miles. Okay, so how much miles it took to travel these three, took to actually get from the first point, second point, and third point, and then the time taken to travel it. Okay, so the total distance is 29064, and total minutes is 36.89. Okay, now if I want to, so this route was calculated on the basis of distance, right? The least distance it must take to travel or touch all these points. Okay, so this route was created based on the least distance traveled. Okay, so 29064 and total minutes is 36.89. Okay, now if I go over the same place, change the travel settings so that the cost is given and the impedance is in time. Okay, so if it gave time here, and now if I just run it, so remember this thing, total length and total minutes. Okay, so the total minutes is 36.89 here because it was taking distance to be less. Okay. Now I give the impedance as time. Now if I run it, a new route has been calculated, right, connecting these 3 points. And now if you check over to my total minutes, you can see that the time has been reduced, right? So before it took 36.8 minutes to travel these 3 points, but now it only took 30 minutes to travel this route, but the distance had increased, right? So before that, the for the first time it was 29,000, but in here it's 33,000 now, even though it took the like higher distance path or a longer distance path, the time taken to travel this path is really less. Okay, so we actually created two routes based on two constraints. So when we wanted the least distance or we wanted the shortest distance path, it took another route and it take 36 minutes. But we want if we want the time taken to be less, it take really another route, and then the time taken was only 30 minutes. Okay, so this is how you can actually create different kinds of routes. Okay, and another thing is in the same travel settings here we have actually sequence. Okay, so if we click on the drop down over here, we have different options. So use current is the stream, it will go from the first point to second point and third point, which means it will actually take the same sequence that we took to place the points. Okay, so we place the points in first point here, second point here, third point here. So it will actually take the same kind of route. So it will go from the first point to second point and third point. That is the use current. Okay, now if I give the use find the best route, it will actually create another kind of route. Okay, so it actually changed, right? So the first point it took from here, right? So before the first point was here, second point was, third point was here. But now, since I gave the best route possible, it actually started the journey from here, went over to this one next, and then the last point should be this one. Okay, that is the find best. Now, if I want my preserve the first and last stop, right? So it actually changed the first and last stop, right? So the before the first point was here, second point was here, third point was here. Since I gave the find bus, it actually changes the sequence of stops. If I want to actually preserve the first and last stop, But then it doesn't matter what if you change the order of the stops in between, then you can use the preserve first and last stop. But there won't be any change here because we only have 3 points in between, right? So the first and second points, it's not changed. But then we can actually set the preserve the first stop, right? So if you want your first stop to not be changed, and then if it doesn't matter if you change the order of other stops, you can use the preserve first stop. And if you have an option where you should not like change the last stop, but then it doesn't matter if the other stops are changed orders, we can use the preserve last stop. Okay. So if it's something like, so if a delivery driver has to take some uh, project, so this guy will be taking up products from the warehouse, right? So he'll be taking up products on the warehouse, and then he'll have different stops to make the delivery, and then his last point should be his home, right? So if that's the thing, he can actually use the preserve first and last stop. So always his first stop will be his warehouse, and his last stop will be his home address. But then it doesn't matter in which order he actually delivers the products, right? So you can use the say first and last stops in this kind of. So so whatever use case is, you can use the sequence how the path should be traveled. Okay. And another thing is your barriers. Okay. So what if, okay, this road has been blocked off. Okay. So there was something here, and this road is blocked off, that you can actually give using these barriers. Okay, so point barriers, you can just give only point barriers. So if I'm giving the line barriers, I'm visualizing that there's a barrier here. Okay, and I'm just saving it. Okay, so there's a barrier here. Okay, so which means no vehicles could travel over here because there's a barrier. Okay, so since I have given a barrier and then I'm giving run, it will actually reroute it so that it don't need to travel this path. Okay, and now if it's the same case as if the whole region, okay, so if I am saying that this whole region has been cut off, okay, this whole region, because there's some kind of program happening there. Okay, so if I'm saying this whole region has been blocked off because there's some program going over there, or there's some security concerns over here, or there's some gas leak over here, and the whole place has been sealed off, then we can give something like a polygon restriction. Okay, so which means that this whole area has been sealed off and there's no vehicles or no transportation goes through there. Okay, and so in this, so such cases I can use this polygon restriction. Okay, so this whole place has been sealed off. Now if I just run, it will reroute the route so that it doesn't need to go over all these places. Okay? So since this route was, or since this whole area was sealed off, the network analyst found out that this route was the second best option to do this sequence in using our distance minutes or the least time taken travel. Okay, so this way we can actually set out up our points of wherever the vehicle, whatever the vehicle should pass. We can actually set up restrictions and we can actually find out routes on the basis of the shortest time taken or the shortest distance traveled.